In today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to rank every Saiyan by greatest potential from top to bottom. And if you want to skip around to a specific character that we discuss in this video, check out the description, which will give you an exact timestamp to each individual character, in addition to also seeing a link where you can actually make this tier list yourself. And if you want me to share my thoughts on your tier list, make sure you share the link in the comment section and tag me and I will respond to you. So to get the party started, guys, the first character that we have to talk about today is the character of Broly. And in reality, guys, there really isn't much to really say here. He grew up on planet Vampa, which was a planet filled with a bunch of angry bugs and his dad. Just doing that allowed him to fight against two Super Saiyan Blues that just finished reaching their peak at the Tournament of Power, and in addition to that, those two characters had to fuse to take Broly down. When you really consider all of that and the fact that Broly never trained with gods, Broly never went into a room of spirit and time, and was simply that strong, he's in a totally different class by himself when it comes to potential, which is why he is the first character in Z tier. Now, there's a second character in Z tier, but not as strong as Broly and not having as much potential as Broly, but this character is Kale, and it's very simple why. If you look at the battle against the Pride Troopers, a very powerful force of heroes from Universe 11, Kale bore the brunt of defeating these characters when she was fighting them with Caulifla, and she was the one that bailed Caulifla out when Caulifla was in trouble. When you consider the fact that Kale went from being berserk to controlling Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 and advancing and becoming so much more powerful throughout the Tournament of Power while having very little experience, that really shows how uber tier powered she really is when it comes to natural talent. And the thing about Kale is that in the manga, Kale was more self-aware of her abilities, but despite all of that, it doesn't take away from the fact that behind Broly, there really is nobody who's really displayed potential quite like Kale, especially since she's basically Broly with lipstick. So, Broly and Kale definitely belong in Z tier by themselves. But our next character on the list is the character of Gohan, which all of you know very well. And Gohan has a history of just bringing out his hidden power at the right times, because throughout fights against Raditz and Frieza and Cell and even Majin Buu, the depths of Gohan's power are just so great, and when you look at the Tournament of Power and see that Gohan got so strong so fast just training in a few days with Piccolo, it really goes to show how incredible Gohan really is. And the only real knock on Gohan is that future Gohan never reached his potential, but the thing about that is that future Gohan's actually somewhat impressive when you consider the fact that he was a kid that had nobody to teach him and help him bring out his abilities, and he made Trunks stronger than himself. So if he can train Trunks to be stronger than himself and he mastered Super Saiyan all on his own, that's the most that future Gohan could have made out of his power. And for today's video, guys, we're not doing different timelines of characters. We just have Gohan, and we also have Trunks, who is the next character on our list for the second character in S tier. Now, the thing is, Trunks probably would not have been here if we were just basing it on present Trunks, but because of what Trunks did in the Zamasu arc against Zamasu, where he went Super Saiyan Rage, that's something that was akin to what Gohan did against Cell. And the thing is that Trunks proved that he did have hidden abilities, which is what the S tier is. The S tier is a ranking of characters that displayed special things, and because of Super Saiyan Rage, it really goes to show you the depths of Trunks' potential. But the other thing about Trunks is that Trunks also had extremely limited resources to get as strong as he did. He grew up in a timeline where basically everybody besides himself and Gohan were dead, and then Gohan eventually died. If Trunks grew up in a world where he had other characters to train with to really bring out his abilities like present Trunks, but with future Trunks' mentality, there's no telling how strong Trunks would have been as a character. So he definitely belongs at number 2 on our list. And that leads us to the third character at S tier, which is Yamoshi. Now, long story short, guys, Yamoshi has done two special things that warrant him being in S tier. He was really the first known Super Saiyan, and in addition to that, he is the catalyst for becoming a Super Saiyan God with his spirit. Those two things just make him a special character, and had Yamoshi been alive and learned the things that our other characters simply learned from each other, there's no telling how strong Yamoshi would have been. So because he's basically the OG of powerful Dragon Ball characters, and for the lore behind who Yamoshi is, he definitely belongs in S tier behind Gohan and Trunks. Now, we're now moving on to A tier, and the thing about A tier is a tier list where we talk more so about characters that were prodigies that learned things extremely fast but didn't really do special things like S tier or Z tier. And the thing is that the very first character that we're going to put in A tier is Caulifla, and some of you are going to get angry about that, but let's make it simple. Caulifla is a Mary Sue. She learned Super Saiyan 2, and even the Ascended Super Saiyan form in an extremely small amount of time. And she's an even more gifted fighter than Kale. Kale has more natural ability, but Caulifla is just a natural fighter, and had she been properly trained by other characters, there's no telling how strong she would have been. Granted, Caulifla is definitely older than some of the younger characters we've seen, like Gohan when he was a kid, or Trunks or Goten, but she's still relatively young and has the potential to grow even stronger had she been properly trained. And that leads us to our next character of Cabba. Now, the thing about Cabba is that he's definitely below Caulifla, obviously, because he flat out said himself that he doesn't have the potential that Caulifla and Kale did. But when you think about it, even though Cabba definitely doesn't have their potential, he did learn Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2 relatively fast. And in addition to that, Cabba is actually the most professional-like fighter out of the three of them, because Kale is raw talent, Caulifla is a naturally gifted fighter, but Cabba is really the professional fighter, you know, in the Army in Universe 6. So for all of those reasons, Cabba definitely belongs in the A tier list. We are now going to go on to the character of Goten. Now the thing is, I thought about this, guys, but Goten theoretically should probably be an S tier character, but because he never displayed any forms of serious hidden potential, he can't go anything above A tier. But at the same time, he did learn things extremely fast when he was really young, and that alone should put him at least in A tier. But the thing that stops him from being S tier is that if you look at the end of Z, and even if you look into GT, Goten just never reached the heights that Gohan and Trunks did. And he may have had the potential to do so, but because we will never know that potential, he can't be ranked higher than them because there's no proof of it. So that's why Goten is in A tier. And closing out our A tier, we're going to put the character of Vegeta. Now, the thing is that Vegeta is not as young as a lot of the characters on this list, but the thing about Vegeta is that Vegeta is a prodigy in his own right when you consider that he was the strongest Saiyan numerous times throughout Dragon Ball history, and for the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, I mean, he was basically always the strongest Saiyan, even though he didn't have a lot of competition because there was only a handful of Saiyans. But basically, when you think of the fact that Vegeta was a prodigy, being the son of his father, and he was so much ahead of Goku, Nappa, and Raditz, and the fact that Goku had to go through so much training just to compete with Vegeta. Had Goku not had Kaioken, he would have completely lost. You could also say Vegeta also had the Great Ape transformation, so it balances out, but Vegeta is clearly a prodigy in his own right. Now, moving on to B tier. B tier is basically prodigies, but not quite as big of a prodigy as the A tier characters. And to start us off, we are going to put the characters of Vegeta Jr. and Goku Jr. And we're not talking about canon or anything like that, guys. We're just talking about characters today. And the reason we're going to talk about Vegeta Jr. first is simple. The reason we rank him slightly ahead of Goku Jr. is because if Goku Jr. and Vegeta Jr. were theoretically equally based characters, Vegeta Jr. would have an advantage simply because of the fact that because he comes from a family that has a lot more technology, that simply would give him an edge because he can push himself farther than Goku Jr. can, because Goku's family is always rural and Vegeta's family is always urban and technology based. So because of that, Vegeta Jr. gets a very slight edge, but the reason these characters are not A tier is because they're simply not that impressive. First of all, we don't know who won the fight between them, and when we look at a hero's legacy as we're moving on to Goku Jr. now, the thing about Goku Jr. is he went Super Saiyan, but he was beating up on warthogs. I mean, come on, like, as a Super Saiyan, you need to become a Super Saiyan to beat up on a strong warthog and weak, earthly-based monsters? That's not very impressive. And as a result of that, he can't be ranked higher. But because they can both go Super Saiyan, their potential's still relatively great. Now, for our next character, we have the character of Pan. And the thing about Pan is that Pan never went Super Saiyan, so she's just simply ranked below Vegeta Jr. and Goku Jr., where she might have more natural abilities than them, but because she can't go Super Saiyan, even as an old lady, they can simply just learn more because they're a lot younger, and because of their Super Saiyan ability, they can just multiply their power multiple times fold. So that's not even counting if they learn more transformations on top of just the base Super Saiyan. So because of the transformation alone, Pan is below Goku Jr. and Vegeta Jr. But as we move on, guys, we are going to put a very interesting character next as King Vegeta, and it's very simple. Vegeta in his own right was a prodigy, and so was his dad, because King Vegeta was the king of the Saiyans, and relative to other Saiyans, he was the most powerful for a point. His son obviously passed him, but if you think about it, it's not like King Vegeta was a slouch relative to all the other Saiyans that never were able to achieve the Super Saiyan form. So he definitely deserves to be ranked relatively high on this list, which brings us to OG Bardock. Now, OG Bardock is mentioned here because we're talking about OG Bardock, not Dragon Ball minus Bardock, or talking about, you know, Bardock from Dragon Ball Super. This is the OG Bardock that got a Zenkai boost, that survived Dodoria's blast, and showed that he was just a very underrated Saiyan, and had he kept training and getting stronger, who knows how strong Bardock would have been. He definitely wouldn't have been strong enough to beat Frieza, but it is showing that Bardock was definitely at least an average level Saiyan. At the very least, he was underrated. And that now leads us to our next Saiyan on this list, where we have the character of Turles, and it's very simple here. We're going to put Turles right below Bardock, and the thing about Turles is that Turles was just a very strong Saiyan Saga level character, and when you consider that he came into the Dragon Ball franchise with a strength that would have taken our characters an excessive amount of training and going through so many special moments in Zenkai boosts just to compete with him, he's definitely not just your average Joe Blow Saiyan, and that's why Turles is as high as he is. And that leads us to the end of our B tier list with the character of Nappa. It's very simple. Nappa was an elite level Saiyan. He's definitely not as strong or has the potential of the other characters on this list, but it's not like Nappa was just an average Saiyan. He was a well above average Saiyan, and that's why he's in the B tier. Now, as we move on to the C tier, we're just going to talk about a bunch of average characters, and there's really not that much to say here, guys. We're going to first start off with the character of Renso. And the thing is that Renso nominated Caulifla to take his place, and for very good reason. She obviously had a lot more ability than him. And when you look at the character of Renso, the only reason why he's at the top of the C tier list compared to the other average Saiyans is really because the Universe 6 Saiyans for the planet Sadala Force are just basically stronger than a lot of those weaker Saiyans would have been for the Universe 7 Saiyans at the beginning in Bardock's time and all of that. So, for those reasons, Renso's at the top. And just to speed up, guys, I mean, Paragus is an average Saiyan. The ranking doesn't really matter here. Tora is just an average Saiyan. When we look at the character of Borgos, I mean, he's just an average Saiyan that, you know, may have done some impressive things with Bardock's group. Same thing for Fasha, who some people theorized was Goku's mother for the longest time before Gine was released. And then you have a character like Shugesh, which is a very interesting character. I mean, you can really argue between Shugesh and argue between Raditz, but, you know, considering the impressive things that Bardock's group was doing, I would give him a slight edge over Raditz. And that's basically it when you consider that Raditz is as strong as a Cyberman, so he would belong at the absolute end of C tier. Second to last but not least, we have D tier. The first character we're going to put in D tier is Goku. Now, here's the thing, guys. Goku is really the Deku of Dragon Ball, or shall I say Deku is the Goku of My Hero Academia. The thing about Goku is that he's the underdog, and while Goku is a fighting genius and was a prodigy on Earth, the thing that you have to understand is that all of the things that Goku did that were impressive as a kid, like fighting King Piccolo, then when he became older he fought Piccolo Jr., beat the Red Ribbon Army, drank the Sacred Holy Water and was able to, you know, not completely get wiped out by it. You know, all the things that Goku did were impressive, but he did that on a planet with extremely weak characters. Like, characters like King Piccolo and, you know, Master Mutai Ito, you know, and Master Roshi and Tien, and all these characters would be flies compared to what these Saiyans would face fighting on other planets. And because of that, and the fact that these younger characters just did a lot more than Goku, Goku can't go higher than D tier, which feels weird because he's like the strongest character in the series, but I'm putting him in D tier. But there's a legit reason for that. And next we have the character of Scarface, and we have the character of Shorty. Not much to say here. These were weak Saiyans when, you know, the Z fighters were preparing to fight against the Saiyans in the Pendulum Room in some of those filler episodes. And the reason I ranked them below Goku is because, I mean, these guys were fighting head-to-head with weaker characters that were preparing to fight the Saiyans. They weren't even fully ready to beat them yet. And when you consider the fact that Goku constantly trains, I'm sure Goku would have surpassed these guys, even if he just trained on Earth for the rest of his life and didn't go through the special training that he did to get as strong as he did. So that's why I would put them there. And to close out the D tier, I have the character of Tarble, where he was casted away and was known as a weakling, and Avocado is a weak villain. So if he couldn't even do that and never even learn Super Saiyan, he's a complete cream puff in all of this. So moving on to F tier, we just have characters that may have been strong but never really brought out their full abilities. And the character that we're going to mention first is Bra. So the reason she's at the top of F tier is basically because she is Vegeta's daughter, and she is Trunks' sister, and she is half Saiyan. It's not like she's a quarter Saiyan like Pan, which shows that she really could have been really strong had she actually trained. And in Dragon Ball GT, when Baby possessed her body, there were moments where she was flying around and powering Baby up. So who knows, maybe Bra actually is or has the potential to be a fighter, but because we never saw that, we just can assume that she doesn't have as great of a potential as we think. And the next character is Gine. Gine is not a fighter, but maybe she can do some basic things, and that's why she's on this tier list. And last but not least, we have the character of Bulma Leigh. Now, that was a Funimation name, but Bulma Leigh is basically Vegeta Jr.'s mother, and the only reason why she's on this list is because she has Saiyan blood. And that basically means that if she didn't dedicate her life to following the path of technology like Bulma did and was actually a fighter, it's possible that she could have been a great fighter too, because Vegeta Jr. gets his genetics from her, which means that she has potential too. She just didn't dedicate her life to fighting. So overall, guys, if you enjoyed this video, you're definitely going to want to check out What If Goku Trained Kale and Caulifla in Universe 6, Goten's potential versus Gohan and Trunks, and last but not least, you are definitely going to want to check out the Saiyan nature versus Saiyan nurture theory. And until next time, stay cool and stay safe, my friends.